Hey everyone, it's Jason. Welcome to another Funkoverse strategy game. Today we are going to be looking at the double packs for the Netflix TV show, movie, whatever I guess it's considered, Squid Game. So we have the big box set, which has 4 characters, the big map, couple of new gameplay modes, and then we're also going to do the one single pack because I feel like, although again you can buy this guy completely separately and play him with anything else, I feel if you're going to buy them, you're going to probably buy both of them, because they kind of go together. So we'll just do it all as one big video. So let's take a look at the big box first. Now, to straight up mention, I have never seen Squid Game, so I don't know the ins and outs of the I'm going to call it a movie. I know the basic premise is essentially the characters are all the people in the greenish costumes or jumpsuits are trying to win money for some various reasons they have for winning money, and they're put into these different games which are basically deadly games, and as more people die, last person standing, I'm guessing, wins the money, but it sounds like it might be rigged and there might be more to it, and some other difficult things. Now, how does this transfer to Funkoverse? Why would they make a game that's about murder games? Or, I think it's because it had some unique setups. So that's actually kind of cool. It has 2 brand new scenarios, red light, green light, and the Squid Game scenarios. So that's definitely one neat thing it's going to bring to this, other than just extra characters and extra things like that. Yeah, so let's go ahead and hop into this and see what we got. Alright, so of course we got our big tray, we have all our components to hold everything, we got our maps and all this stuff. So let's scooch the box out of the way. So here's our instruction book right away. So it's going to be the same as anything else. You can pick this up, play 100% on its own, or mix and match it with any other Funkoverse game that is out there. We have all our different lists of all our tokens, our costs, all that. I'm not going to go through on how to play everything. Now it's going to have the same breakdown as every other game, though. So here's how you basically your basic setup for the game: taking your turns, doing your actions, move, challenge, assist, interact, special things. Your big things, you have rally, exhausting characters, stuff like that. Then it goes down to breaking down a little bit more on how to do the movements, adjacency. Here's your movement page. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I went through all these a bunch of times. How challenges work, which are basically battles, essentially. Knocking down characters. How to do the setups on here. Just various things to do. Abilities and traits, we have our 4 different colors. Item rules, bonus objectives. So now this does mention, this is going to bring other stuff that may not be in the game as well, like objectives may or may not be something that are in this game all the time. Companions, which aren't in this game. How to mix all the games. More players, just giving more people things. All the glossary of all the different terms, which is actually a really nice thing because it has stuff that, again, isn't necessarily in this game, but it puts it on nicely in one area. And since this is the newest game out, this should be the comprehensive rules for everything and what all that is. Explaining what a straight line is, what tokens are. Okay, so that's all that. Let's take a look at the board quick, and then we'll take a look at the characters and stuff. Move the top of the box over, move the character tray over, if I can without knocking everything off. So, the board is going to come with 2 different areas. It's the courtyard and the barracks, I believe. So this is the barracks, which is kind of like a like where they have people rest and stuff. And I'm imagining there's some games that are played in there. I think this is a giant money ball. They kind of show a little bit different picture. Yeah, they show a picture of it kind of on the Solo Figures one. So again, not having seen the show, I don't know all the details about this. But as far as the typical rules of how these boards work, they're symmetrical on either side, or kind of symmetrical. So you have the big 2 lines there. Add some extra walls. We have the odd-shaped wall, and then we have an L wall. And then it flips to the other side, the L wall, the odd-shaped, and the 2 lines. So deciding whichever side you're on, you're going to have an equal footing. But of course, being that this is a more adult-oriented thing, you're going to have all these little blood splatters and stuff everywhere. But yeah, they have some other different little details in there. Get a little bit better look at some of that. And I think on the sides here, they have what some of the different games are. Like, I don't know what they mean, but let's take a look at that. So we have, they're like shooting marbles, it looks like. We have, let's see if I can get this to fold down and look at that side. We have like a tug of war on that one. There's making shapes. I'm not really sure. Triangle, star, circle, but there's an umbrella, which is kind of weird. And if we looked into this one, again, not really sure what these symbols mean, but I'm guessing they're, like I said, they're probably like some sort of games that they play throughout the show. We have, hard to get this to dig around my camera. So we have, so right here, this one right here is red light, green light, which is one of the modes we get to play. I know that's just kind of based on what it looks like. What do we have on this side? Let's flip the board so I don't wreck it. So there we have them doing some other shapes. Maybe they just repeat. There's a tug of war, but it looks like it's over a pit. There's some marbles again. So they're kind of, there's like running on blocks of some sort. So interesting. So a bunch of different stuff there. Yeah, so that's the basic typical map. What's really cool about this set, and this might be a reason to pick this up even if you don't play or have watched Squid Games or maybe don't have necessarily interest in it. And they've done this with some of the other sets where they add some neat modes or scenarios, which might be a reason to pick it up. So here we have the courtyard. The big giant open map. There are no borders on here. There are none of the, so look on this side, we have the pink borders, which you have to walk around, you can't see through. There's nothing on here. It's a full open map, and I'm almost positive this is the only map of the entire series of Funkoverse games that is an open map. Now, there are a couple scenario modes that you get to play that involve this, which do change the layout a little bit. But that's kind of neat though. Because if you're playing this with a regular game, you can do different stuff. So if we look at our scenarios here, we have the barracks here. We have the typical leaders game, which, like all the other leaders games, you have characters starting in each area. You have special leaders that start here. And basically you gain more points for knocking out leaders. So each player picks a leader, and they start on the star icon. And then after that, they don't worry about them, but it says that gaining points. If your leader knocks out a rival leader, so the head guy knocks out a head character, you gain 4 points. If an ally knocks out a leader, you gain 3 points. If the leader knocks out a rival, you gain 2 points. If the leader knocks out an ally, if the leader's ally knocks out a rival, gain 1 point. So the high guys knocking out the high guys gain more points. The low guys knocking out a high guy gain 3. High guy knocking out just a regular guy gets 2 points, and a regular guy knocking out a regular guy gets 1 point. Or you can activate the marker. So it's basically the higher tier guys get you more points. And then scoring to 6 or 10 points, depending if you're playing with 2 or 3 characters. So yeah, that's how leaders play. It's pretty much typically how it plays everywhere else. And then we have territories, which is, again, one we've seen a lot. Just the starting area and the scoring area. So your characters, if one or more of your characters in the scoring area at the end of the round gain a point. But ignore this when playing with 2 characters per side. You have the most characters in the scoring area then, at the end of the game. At the end of the round, gain 1 point. If you knock out a rival, gain a point. If you interact with a point marker. So this one's basically they're trying to get to these points, knock out the opponent, or have the most people in the scoring area. So you're just trying to play kind of like King of the Hill type of game, essentially. And that's territory. So and that's been done a bunch of times as well. So now what's neat about this is we have the 2 extra modes. We have Squid Game. So here Squid Game is going to take this regular map, and it's going to basically then make this white box your barrier. It's going to ignore the rest of the game board. And what you're trying to do is you have a defensive area up here, and it's the offensive here. So you have one team against the other team. The offensive team is going to be trying to pick up these squid tokens and run them into the scoring area. And if they do, they gain extra points. They gain 2 points every time they do it. Or they can get a point by interacting with these markers. But the defensive characters gain 1 point every time they knock out another player, so they can stop them from doing it. So the offensive point is not worried about knocking out the other players. It's to get to these zones and interact with them. If they knock another player, great, because that keeps them off the board for a turn. But that's not their focus. The defensive is the exact opposite. Their entire focus is just to be knocking out the other player. They don't care about trying to interact with objects. But then the defensive players is also they gain 1 point for every time there's a squid token at the end of the round. So if the offensive players aren't picking them up and carrying them with them, then they can gain points. So as a character loses their squid marker, if they enter an out of bounds areas, you can use a push effect and knock them out. And then it's immediately placed back in that anchor. Or if they're knocked out, it's placed on their cooldown track, and when they shift off it, it goes back into the center area. Yeah, so very interesting. And then we have the tokens for those. So let me just grab them out of the baggie. I normally look at all the tokens first. I'm going a little bit different route this time. So we do have our typical exhausted tokens. So we have 6 of those actually. We have the 4 characters plus the 2 basic characters. And then we have our 4-point crystals, which are A, B, C, and D, which are kind of like this pink color. Then we have the 2 stars for our leader tokens. But then we have our 2 squid tokens, so they're one or the other. So that's how those guys are. And then we, of course, have our first player token. Yeah, so that's kind of a neat little mode. Just going to play just in this area, so you're trying to run to one of the 3 different spots, and the other guys are trying to stop it. So that kind of makes a neat thing. Then the other mode we have is red light, green light, which utilizes the entire board. And this one's kind of neat as well, because it takes the game from, instead of being a versus one player versus the other necessarily, it's you're versus the game. I don't know how many other modes do this. We are not playing in direct competition, like directly versus the other player. So each player starts in the starting area, trying to get to the finish line. You're going to place these 4 extra tokens. So we're going to get these extra minion tokens, which have extra numbers that represent more characters that were in the movie. So you have number 324, and they have 2 white ones. So we have 218, and then we have some black ones, which are 101, and 199. It's supposed to represent 4 other characters that were in the game. And you place them on the boards here, so white, black, white, black. And then what you're trying to do is get to the end of the board. And these guys are also trying to get to the end of the board. They give you 2 extra characters to play as. So it says, gaining points is characters from the finish line. If a character from the finish line is placed into your cooldown track using the rule above, gain 1 point. If you knock out a rival, you can gain a point. So although you're not necessarily trying to fight against a rival, you can hit them to knock points, or you can interact with these points to gain them. And they kept the last 2, I think, just because that keeps the regular concept of the game. But it says, so how do you actually play this one? So it says, whenever you exhaust your character, you may move one of your sprinter tokens, that's these guys, towards the finish line. If a sprinter minion token is removed from the map, place it on one of its cooldown track. When a sprinter minion token shifts off, place it on its starting square. A lane row is a row that goes from the starting edge of the board to the finish line. So a row is going to be one of these. Technically, it would be a column, usually goes up and down, so it's kind of weird. Before start of the end of a round sequence, do the following instructions. Place a standing character and place any standing character and sprinter minion token that are in the finish line on one of their cooldown tracks. Then a main character or minion token in each lane that is nearest to the finish line defends against a 3 challenge. So basically, if you can get to the finish line, you score a point. Otherwise, whoever's closest has to do a challenge. So it says that. Basically, what you're trying to do, it says that rule is up here. The dull senses when you move around. If your movement is detected, you will be eliminated, but you won't get caught. And if you're behind somebody, you won't be caught if you're behind somebody else. When faced with danger, take refuge with the herd. So the idea is whoever's in front has to do a challenge, which might knock them out and set them back on their track. Or slow them down or whatever. So basically you're going to keep trying to get across. End of the round, whoever's in the front is going to get spotted. So you're going to try and maybe use your sprinters here to stay in front of you, and then you can use your character to run to the end. It's kind of the idea. But you can also, push a rival in front of you, or knock them out if they're getting close, and then maybe you can get in front of them. Knock out one of their sprinters if you want. They only have 2 defense as well. Yes, it's definitely a fun, different, interesting mode. Alright, so that's what we have for all of them. Let's look at the rest of the components, and then we'll hop into the characters. So, of course, we have our 2 cooldown tracks. Same as any other cooldown tracks, nothing special there. We have our baggie of crystals, which are kind of a reddish-pink color. I'm not going to take these out, because they're, similar. We have our bases, which are the black and white ones. And these little baggies are always a pain to open for me. So we have our 4 bases, our 2 black, 2 white. Help the character stand. Then we have our 2 basic characters. We have Worker 28 and 29. So they have the regular side and knockdown side. These are, so if you want to have a 3 versus 3 game, you have 2 extra regular characters just to use. Then we have our tokens here for abilities. We have 3 gray, we have 2 blue, and we have 4 yellow. So those are our different tokens all of our characters are going to use. Alright, so that is, and then we of course have our set of dice, which will have our shield side, our damage side, and our exclamation point success side. And then a couple different versions of those. You have the 6 dice, same as any other game. Alright, let's take a look at our cards. Alright, so our first 2 cards that want to show up again is our basic character cards. So we have Worker 28 and Worker 29, which, like every other Funkoverse game, big box set, they have just these extra ones to make up in case you haven't bought any extra characters or pack set. You want to play more than a 2 versus 2 character game. So we have Move, challenge, assist, interact, and rally. Your basic actions that every character has in general. They just list them on here for these guys. The other thing's neat about these is because if nothing else, they work as a good reminder cards. You can just always put these down near your other characters as a reminder. So like you could take your other character, you gotta just lay it like this, saying, hey, I remember I have these extra actions to use. So it's kind of a neat idea too. Alright, so I'm gonna hop into our characters. I am going to butcher every single one of these names. I'll guarantee that. So we have Sai Biok, Sabiok? I'm not sure. Alright, so she has gray and blue. So kind of like tech and, I forgot what these colors mean already. Luckily, we have a book sitting right here, right? So, gray are usually, cunning, ingenuity, and deceptiveness. So, I guess like technique, maybe. And then blue are fitness, agility, and coordination. So, so she has, so here's her, but she does not stand by herself. She does need a base. She's number 67 in the game, if that means any difference to anybody. And of course she has her hand open to hold an item. So she has 2 defense. She has her, her trait is pickpocket. When she becomes exhausted, shift an ability token on your cooldown track, down 1 for each adjacent rival. So when she gets exhausted, you can then shift an ability token so she can use her other abilities a little bit quicker. Then she has, let's scooch her over a little bit, so make sure I get that. She has, for 3, Sucker Punch. Challenge 3 increases challenge by 1 for each gray ability in your token pool. Interesting. So if you use it first, it's a lot cheaper than if you use it later. But every time you become exhausted, you can get everything off there quicker. Easily overlooked. Place her in a square within 3 that is not adjacent to any rivals. You kind of sneak around. That's a neat idea. And intimidating demand. Control an adjacent rival and make them go a basic action. Move a number of spaces equal to the number of blue in your ability token pool. Interesting. So ideally, what you should do is sucker punch someone. So you could sucker punch this for, and then make intimidating demand will get better because it'll let you move more spaces. But if you do the other one first, one of the other 2 first, when you sucker punch, if you get to move around more, then that one does more damage. So it's kind of a neat idea. Depending on which one you do first, the other one will get a little bit better. That's definitely neat. And then as every turn, they can get a move off quicker, so you can keep rotating them back and forth on which direction you want. So if you sucker punch someone because you were near them, and then you want intimidating demand to be even better, it's been like a turn or something, you could go ahead and pickpocket, get it off there quick, restart it back up at the top. That's probably why they start so high. So it's definitely an interesting character. Alright, up next we have number 1. This older gentleman. I like how she has her coat open. He has his coat zipped up. So this is Linam or Ilnam. So he only has 1 defense. He has yellow, which is leadership. Leadership, charisma, or willpower. And then he has some gray. Wisdom. At the start of the game with 1 point. He may do any action while knocked down. So that's actually kind of cool. They don't have a lot of characters that have and he just hopped off of my thing. Probably because I bumped him. Let's give him a base. There we go. Yeah, there's not a lot of characters in this game that have like static beginning of the game abilities. There's usually stuff they can do or interact with different things or activate something special. Last time he starts with 1 additional point no matter what, and getting to do stuff while knocked down, which is very helpful. So he could get an extra move action or punch someone if they're next to him. So yes, for 2 yellow, call for aid. Choose a character that isn't adjacent to him. Move them up to 2 squares. This movement must end adjacent to him. That's neat. So he can call. So it's kind of neat because he can call his partner over to help him stand up, maybe, because he can do an action when knocked down. So you could call them over, have them help him out or whatever. Or he could, it's just technically, it's just a character. You could pull somebody else and kind of like feint, call them towards you, and then you could sucker punch them. That's kind of a neat idea too. Convincing smile, controlling adjacent character, make them do a basic move and basic challenge in any order. So again, you could have your team do something, gives them extra action, or you could force the opponents to do something that might not be very helpful for them. And for 2 yellow, again, turn it around. Him and each of his allies do a move 1. So this is kind of neat. So the other character was all about sneaky and then gaining actions, but she did have the ability to kind of mess with other players. Controlling adjacent rival. He gets to control anybody and kind of convince anyone to do what he wants. Very, like, manipulative. So that's kind of neat. Alright, let's look at our 3rd character. We have a Jihun, or Gihun. So here's his character. Is number 456. Now, he doesn't even have the jacket on, which is kind of cool. Look at, like, the 3 different versions of them. So he has 2 defense. He's a blue and yellow. So notice there's no red characters. Red is the aggressive color, which is very interesting that in a game based on a thing about playing these deadly games, that nobody has the aggressive, like, attacking thing. They're all, like, manipulative, leadership, telling people what to do, tricking people, or moving around athleticism, which is kind of a neat idea. So his desperate measures. He may reduce the cost of ability he does by 1. When he becomes exhausted, do a challenge to him equal to the number of ability costs he reduced this turn. Interesting. So basically he can exert himself extra, making his abilities cheaper, but if he does it too much, he's going to have to do a harder challenge, and if he doesn't successfully do that challenge, he could get knocked down. So for 3L, he has Heart of Gold. Place him adjacent to an ally within 2 squares, doing an assist or interact action. Cool, so he gets to move and help out his teammates a lot quicker. He has 2 blue, take the lead. Choose an ally. He can see him and that ally do a move of 2. Cool. And then back to back, which is a challenge. Do a basic challenge. An adjacent ally may do a basic challenge. Okay, so this is kind of neat. So we had first characters all about kind of sneaking around, maybe doing stuff behind people's backs, manipulating them. The older gentleman was all about forcing other people to do stuff, whether your team or somebody else. This guy's all about just teaming up with somebody and making them even better. Because he's going to let himself and an ally do an extra action. He's going to let him and someone else both move so you can kind of get around quicker. Or you can get next to somebody quicker and help do an extra action. So it's really neat. So you could get one guy. I think like you're looking at that the red light green light mission. He's probably gonna be very good at this because you can move one of the other tokens up, and then you can also move him. Like if they're up farther, you can move him right next to them. Like, hey, position somebody else next to something, move him quicker. Or if they move next to somebody else, you can move him and then you could attack with them. So you can do a lot of extra interesting things with this character like that. So that's kind of neat. Alright, so before we hop into our last character, let's look at some of our items. So we're going to give him the first one here. which is this. It's called a honeycomb. So actually, I'll pull this back out. So it's this little circle dish, which has an umbrella in it. Which you did see on that one side. We had some different pictures, which is like a circle, a triangle, and an umbrella. So I'm not really sure what those all were, but there is the honeycomb. So this must be like a hidden picture, or you find this picture and you match it. I'm not sure. But this has the ability, it says at the start of the game, add 1 yellow ability token to your ability tokens. So that's kind of neat. So we started with 4 yellow, and if we look at our characters, we have 1, 2, and then the other guy here also has a yellow. That's 3. That's why we get a 4th token. So that's really going to work for 3 of the characters. Whichever one of them you give them to them, they can get an additional yellow token. They can do that ability more often. So for like him, that means he could perform the Heart of Gold twice because now he have 2 yellow tokens. For him, he can perform each one of these either an extra time or do both of them because now he has 2 yellow tokens. And we'll see how it works with the last one. Now, hers isn't going to become giving her a yellow token is not going to really make any sense. But that is definitely a cool item. So again, like, with this game, like, if you didn't really care about Squid Game, the characters or the theming necessarily, even if you don't like these characters or what they do necessarily, the board, the map is kind of cool, the new snares are kind of cool, but the items are always definitely cool. So this is kind of neat, because there's a lot of other characters that could benefit from having an additional yellow token, just to give them extra things to do. Alright, then we have the next item, which is an indentation, which has 3 different symbols, and on the back, it's going to show them kind of like together. So there's like a circle, a square, and a triangle, and then you have a circle, square, and triangle mixed together with a bunch of digits on there. I don't know if them digits mean anything specific, but if we give it to one of the guys, they can kind of hang on to it, hold it out that way, or they can flip it the other way. And here's the indentation picture. So this has a cooldown too, so when you use it, it goes on your 2 on your cooldown track. It says, choose an ally this character can see within 3 squares. Place that ally adjacent to this character and give them the indentation. So this is basically a helpful way to get allies next to each other. So in a game like this, we have this particular game, Squid Game, where you have stuff where maybe characters are trying to like get across the board or dodge things to certain areas. Getting to move an ally 3 spaces close to you is very easy. And the fact is then you can give it to that character. And then now they can kind of then again use it a little bit later, a couple turns later to do it again. That is definitely a neat idea. Yeah, just an ability token. I was trying to see if her one thing helped her out, but it says if an ability token, so not an item. That's definitely a neat little thing. You could have some fun uses for some other games. Maybe have lots of these characters have some movement abilities or stuff to help allies out. So maybe it's not as beneficial for these guys, definitely more, but it could be helpful for other characters playing other games that don't have all these extra movement abilities. Or ally things. Like, hey, you have characters that don't have anything that really help each other out. This could be a great way to get them closer to each other. Awesome. Alright, so then our last character is one of the bad guys. He's the front man. So here he has this black trench-coated outfit, this hood with like this face mask with kind of like a hive or speakery eyes to it. So he has the gray and the yellow. So he has 2 defense and Game Master At the start of the game, choose one frontman scenario status card, put it into play. At the start of each round, you may replace the current frontman scenario status card with another one. Okay, so before we even look at the other 3 abilities, let's look at his cards. So he has frontman scenario status cards, because they're going to change how the game works a little bit. So this is kind of neat, because he's almost in an extent of himself. He's almost like a third game mode. So he has brutal contests, increase basic challenges by 1. So that means every challenge is going to be harder to do. You can do ground rules. As a basic action, a character may move 3 squares in a straight line. This lets characters go a little bit quicker. Or accelerated pace. As a basic action, a character may shift an ability token on their cooldown track by 2. This will speed everything up. So this is kind of a neat little idea that you could add, even if like you want to add just one of these cards to another game. To like, hey, here's the thing. You know, maybe have it where anyone, at the beginning of each round, someone could opt to use this something. Who knows? Very, very, very interesting. So then he has his 3 abilities. He has 3 yellow, keep order. Do a basic challenge. If successful, each ally from 3 squares may do a basic challenge. So again, these guys are all about interacting with the other characters a lot more. 3 gray, intimidating stride. Move 3. This may move frontman through rivals. Move each rival that frontman moved through 1 square, so you just push guys around. And then for 1, you can change the rules. Replace the current frontman scenario status with a different one. Do a basic action. So that's kind of cool. So you can actually use him to swap into one of the other ones. So if you want to have that additional movement, or you want to have that cooldown, or the challenge cost is a little bit higher, or does more damage, he can change it fairly quickly, because it's only 1 and then it'll cool down. Just means every time you're doing that, you can't use your stride. But then since he also gets to do a basic action, he immediately gets to do one of these extra actions. So you could do this is kind of a neat idea, because you could do like, have this one out, you have the basic challenge, challenges by 1. So if like you did keep the order, now you go basic challenge, as its basic challenge, you get to do an extra thing there. If successful, each ally within 3 squares also is a basic challenge, which then ups it by 1 as well, so it's going to be even more deadly. Then you can play your 1 gray one to change the rules, replace the current frontman scenario with a different one, and then change it to accelerated pace. You could then go a basic action. As a basic action, a character may shift an ability token on their cooldown track by 2. So now you can move that yellow one you just played on the 3 down to 1. So then after 1 turn, that change the rules and that yellow are both going to drop off, and now you can redo them. And now you could do the same thing. You could either, you could like have the accelerated pace to help somebody else use theirs, and on his turn, you could swap that back out, change the rules to do something else. So there could be some interesting combos with that ability and that effect. So that's definitely cool. So that is our big box set. So let's set all of these guys off to the side, and then let's look at our single pack. Alright, so this is a very interesting single pack, because it's kind of 2 characters in one, which is very interesting. Now again, this is not a standalone game. You have to have one of the other full Funkoverse sets, because it doesn't have the maps, doesn't have all the different tokens and stuff. It has the tokens you need to play these characters, but not enough for everything else. Now you can play it with the Squid Game, of course, or you can play with Batman, or you can play it with Peter Pan, or any other 2-player pack. They didn't make too many single character packs, but this is one. Now, you also see I have this limited edition Chase, because he's a special version. Let's see if we pop this out of the way. Let's take a look at his Funko quick. So, yeah, he's metallic red. And this is, the metallic version is his chase variant. The other one just wouldn't be metallic. So that's kind of cool that we got that. Again, but the chase does not change the gameplay. Every other thing is the exact same. It's just an aesthetic. So he's going to come with 5 more crystals, or 6 more crystals, which match the other ones. They're the same ones. So they can just get mixed with those. He is going to have some items. Of course. So he's going to have his base, and he gets a black base. We kind of just set him here. We'll set him up on, up on the foam block. And then he has a regular item and a special extra thing, which we'll look at in just a sec. Just want to pull out some of the other tokens. So he gets an exhausted token, except his is circle. They've always been squares, so I don't know why they made one circle token. I think it's the only circle token in the entire game. So that's very interesting. Also very interesting, I think they just screwed up, because we have 2 blue and a red for our ability tokens, but then we have a gray one that's a square, so I think they printed these on the wrong pictures. So that's very interesting. We do have some other tokens which go with his character's abilities. So we're going to look at that in just a sec. So we will get our little instruction booklet, which is just kind of explain a little bit of how he sort of played, some tips and tricks, and what the components are. Let's bring our little podium back over. So this is, Junho. Now I wonder if he's supposed to be pink. And he just has more of a sheen of red because he's metallic. I'm not for sure. Alright, so Junho has the blue and gray colors. He has, let me get this to focus for you. He has 2 defense and inside man. When Junho wins a challenge or interacts with a point marker, place an evidence token on the 3 of your cooldown tracks. So he gets these 3 evidence tokens, which are double-sided. Which just look like they show a binder with like some information on it. So he's got 3 evidence tokens. So every time he does a challenge or interacts with a point marker, he gets an evidence token on his 3 cooldowns. So it'll take a while for that to get off. He has for 2 blue, exploit weakness, range 2, challenge 2. First character out of all 5 of these characters that has a ranged ability. Everyone else is a basic challenge next to somebody. You may shift an evidence token on your cooldown track by 1 to increase this challenge by 1. Cool. So you spend some of that evidence to make your guys stronger. Bypass security. Move 2. This may move Junho through rivals. You may shift an evidence token on one of your cooldown tracks by 2 to increase this move by 1. Interesting. So you spend them evidence as kind of like an additional currency. And then for 1 gray, send data. Shift 2 evidence tokens off your cooldown track to gain 1 point. So it's kind of neat. So he has to do challenges or interact with stuff to put these tokens on there. Then when they're on there, you can either increase your movement or increase your challenge by spending them. Or you can get rid of them completely just to gain extra points. Which kind of might make him sort of a broken character, because if he interacts, he gains 1 point. Then you can spend 1 thing to gain an additional point. And then still his abilities aren't useless. It would be different if his abilities were like if his bypass security. So instead of saying move 2, it would say move X. And if it said shifting evidence token, down X number of spaces, gain, move equal to X. So it starts on 3. So if it was, if it's on 3, you can shift it down to 0, shift it off the board and move it down 3. Then he would gain 3 spaces. But if you only shifted it by 1, he'd only gain 1 space. I think that would have been a little bit neater idea, because then it would have forced in the same thing with the exploit weakness. If you would have done a challenge of X based on how many you move that down, so he could potentially do Like, he could do a challenge of 3, you know, or you could even say, like, have a limit on there, has to start at 2, at max 2 or something. Let's try, so it's a challenge up to 3 points. It could start at 3. That would have been an interesting way to do that, because then it would have forced you to decide 100% between using these abilities on the evidence or spending them for points. Because realistically, you could just keep shifting these guys down, get them down to 1, then spend 1 day to, when they're down to the 1 spot, spend that data just to get them off and gain an extra point. Although it does take 2 tokens to do it, so that's kind of the kicker there, is it says shift 2 evidence tokens off your track. So first of all, you have to get 2 on there, and you have to get rid of 2 of them. So you're only going to get the exploit weakness or bypass security so often. You can only use 1 at a time. So I mean, I guess it does balance itself out, because if you put it on, you bypass security, or you put the bluing on there, now it's at 2. Your blue's on there, but you're not going to be able to use another blue right away until you get that token off of there. So you're going to have to do some basic abilities. So it probably balances itself out fairly well. Alright, then we do have an item. We have the cellular phone, which has a 2 cooldown. Right, get him off to the side there. Place the character you're standing with in your starting area. This item may be used or knocked down. So this is kind of a little bland, just a little white block, and then you can kind of see your little bumps on the back to kind of show like the, like phone camera part. They could have put something on there, even like a squiggle line or a different color. But yeah, that's kind of neat. Again, there can always be a lot of characters that can use this very well. But yeah, place this character standing in your starting area, maybe usually knocked down. So if you got knocked down somewhere else, before you have to worry about getting knocked out and taken off the board, you can always spend this to get moved back to the starting area and start over. Very interesting. Alright, so then the second character, which is what is really unique about this solo character set, because usually these boxes always have like 2 characters in a map. They've had a few solo characters. This has a secondary solo character. We have the Masked Manager. So we get this extra little mask card here. Not card, plastic. It has a square on it. And it has little notches on his face here, so you can then pop this in. And then now we have a new character. So he plays a double character here. So this one uses red and blue. Now I mentioned earlier we had no characters that had red, which is kind of the aggression or attack one. But now we get one that does. So Sentry, if Masked Manager has not moved on their turn, increase the range of their challenge actions by 1. So if he doesn't move, he gets to use extra challenges. So he has 2 red, take aim, challenge 3. So you can make that 4, which is very powerful. 3 blue, rapid shot. Do a range 2, challenge 2, up to 3 different rivals. Oh boy, so he can shoot 3 characters with a 2 or 3 challenge. And then order prisoners. Pull each masked rival manager. Can see 1 square towards the masked manager. So you can kind of pull them closer. So then maybe you can do rapid shots easier. Very, very interesting. Now, you could also combine him, like with a team. Now, if you have both of these, you could combine him with the front man, because you're both kind of the bad guys. That'd be interesting mixing some of them abilities, right? So you can have this one, which will let that guy move a lot quicker, get closer. Or you increase all his actions, basic actions, by 1. Now, these are all challenges, so they're not going to make his... Because they're not basic challenges, they're not going to make them stronger. But it does let him do a basic one for cheaper. Or, as a basic action, you can move his ability tokens on their track down by 2. So you can get these off quicker and be able to do stuff. So you can combine those 2 together. to make for some very interesting combinations and battles. So that's very cool. Alright, so the last thing I did just want to kind of point out, or show off here. So what I did was, because I knew this guy had 2 characters, I bought a second box. Because that way I could play as both the Mask Manager and, what was it, Jin-Ho. I somehow got a second chase out of it. I don't know how. I ordered this online, so it's all random. So that's kind of crazy. My box is still kind of stuck together. So I was hoping to get, like, I was honestly hoping to get a regular version so I could have one of each. But I ended up getting a second chase out of it, which is very crazy. And look, they misprinted that token on this one, too. So yeah, I got all the same stuff in the same box. But now I can have one with the mask, one without the mask. Yeah, I'll have an additional cell phone item if I want one. Which isn't, you know, I don't mind getting some of the extra items if I get some of these extra characters for cheap. But yes, I can have each one of these guys standing next to each other. Although the upside about getting an additional... Let's see if I can pop him out of there. Of getting an additional chase is that now if I have these guys on the board somewhere, they at least have matching costumes because they're both shiny red versus one having a different color than the other. But now I can essentially play, now with this, having both bought 2 of these, I can play these 2. So now I could have 6 Squid Game characters, you know, out at the same time, and you could play, you know, these 3 together versus these 3, you know, or if you wanted to make a weird challenge, you could always play these 4 versus these 2 with, like, the 2 worker characters. I don't know where the cards went. Everything kind of just jumbled here. With the 2 worker tokens, you know. So basically the bad guys versus 2 generic characters versus 4 fully formed characters. It'd be kind of an interesting dynamic. Maybe even for, like, that Squid Game mode where these guys are literally trying to defeat guys versus these guys are trying to run. So you could have some interesting interactions there. So that was our Squid Game unboxing. Yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it. So yeah, like, you know, like I said, even if this is the lady from the red light, green light, which is what they're playing right there. Yeah, even if you don't care for the game, it's sometimes worth picking these up for additional characters to play as, or new modes, new items, things like that. I've said the same thing in looking at some of the other ones. Like, I got Game of Thrones. I've never watched Game of Thrones. Picked it up, got it. I have all the Harry Potter sets. I've never really watched Harry Potter, but it gives you extra things. Some of them just might be other people might know them and might intrigue them to jump in. So that's what you got. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. See you guys in the next video. Bye.